before the rise of Rome, before the golden age of Byzantium in the highlands of East Africa. An ancient kingdom began to shape the world. They carved monuments that pierced the sky. They commanded fleets across the Red Sea. They minted gold coins while Europe still lived in tribes. This is the rise of Aksum, a forgotten empire that once rivaled the greatest civilizations of the ancient world. Welcome to Tales of Ethiopia. Our story begins in the northern highlands of what is now Ethiopia and Eritrea, a region blessed with fertile land, mountain defenses, and proximity to the Red Sea. From this land emerged the kingdom of DMT, a precursor to Aksum, around 100 AD. As civilizations around the Mediterranean bloomed, a new power began to rise inland. The kingdom of Aksum grew from a crossroads of trade, culture, and religion. It inherited the writing system of South Arabia, adopted elements of Egyptian, Nubian, and Greco-Roman trade customs, and began to forge its own unique identity. Aksum's location gave it incredible power. From the port of Agulhas, Aksumite merchants traded ivory, gold, frankincense, and exotic African animals. In return came Roman wine, Indian spices, Persian textiles, and Arabian incense. By the 3rd century, Aksumite kings began minting coins, not just in gold and silver, but engraved with inscriptions in ge'ez and symbols of their gods and power. These were some of the first coins produced in sub-Saharan Africa, signaling Aksum's economic reach. Even Roman scholars recognized Aksum. A 4th century text referred to it as one of the 4 greatest powers of the world. Alongside Persia, Rome, and China, Aksum was not just wealthy, it was ambitious. Under kings like Gadarat and Osanas, Aksum expanded its reach. It took control of key trade routes and even launched military campaigns across the Red Sea into South Arabia, in modern-day Yemen. Their naval strength and army gave them influence over the incense trade and allowed them to project power beyond Africa. Aksum became the bridge between 3 continents, Africa, Arabia, and Asia. Aksumite kings ruled not just as warlords, but as sacred leaders. Many claimed descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, tying Ethiopia's royal bloodline to the Bible. As Aksum grew, so did its cultural and spiritual influence. The kingdom began constructing its famous obelisks, or stelae, towering monuments carved from single pieces of granite, some over 30 meters tall. These were tomb markers for kings and nobles, and remain among the most extraordinary structures in Africa. Aksum became a symbol of strength, unity, and prosperity. It stood not only as a kingdom of warriors and merchants, but of faith, writing, architecture, and diplomacy. This was not just a kingdom, it was becoming an empire. Aksum and the age of Christianity, in a time when much of the world still worshipped many gods. One African empire made a bold declaration. Aksum, once a kingdom of merchants and warriors, transformed into the first Christian empire on earth. But how did Christianity arrive in the Horn of Africa? Who were the men behind this divine shift? And how did Aksum's faith shape Ethiopian identity for centuries to come? Christianity first reached Aksum through the sea, carried by merchants, travelers, and refugees fleeing persecution in the Roman Empire. But the most important turning point came in the early 4th century, with the arrival of 2 young Syrian boys, Frumentius and Odysseus. Shipwrecked on the Red Sea coast, they were taken to the Aksumite royal court. Frumentius became a trusted advisor to the young king, and quietly began spreading Christian teachings. After traveling to Alexandria, he was appointed Bishop of Aksum by the Patriarch of the Coptic Church. He returned as Abba Salama, the Father of Peace, and began converting the court and people of Aksum under King Azana. Aksum made its official turn to Christianity around 330 AD. Azana declared his new faith in royal inscriptions, replacing old pagan symbols with the cross. He also issued coins bearing Christian imagery, making Aksum the first kingdom in the world to put the cross on its currency. His inscriptions still survive today in Giaz, Greek, and Sabaean, declaring his belief in the Lord of Heaven. Azana not only strengthened the state, but also aligned it with the growing Christian world of Rome and Byzantium. This spiritual diplomacy brought new prestige to Azam in the centuries that followed. Christianity became the spiritual backbone of the Aksumite Empire. Churches were built in stone, many of them carved into the earth itself. Monks spread across the land, preserving not only scripture, but literature, science, and art. The Giaz language became the liturgical tongue, giving rise to one of Africa's oldest written traditions. Aksum began celebrating unique Ethiopian Christian practices, such as fasting traditions, ark veneration, and holy processions tied to both Old and New Testament stories. The empire stood firm in its faith, even as the rest of North Africa and the Middle East rapidly embraced Islam. But no empire lasts forever. In the 7th century, the Islamic caliphates rose across Arabia, rapidly expanding across North Africa and taking control of the Red Sea. Trade routes shifted, and Aksum found itself increasingly isolated. As a Christian kingdom surrounded by Muslim powers, it lost access to international trade. Environmental challenges compounded the problem. Deforestation, soil exhaustion, and changing climate patterns hit agriculture hard. Once thriving cities began to fade. Legend speaks of a queen who delivered the final blow to the crumbling empire. Her name was Yodit, or Gudit, remembered in Ethiopian tradition as a fierce warrior queen who destroyed churches, burned cities, and overthrew the Solomonic dynasty. By the 9th and 10th centuries, the Aksumite Empire was in decline. Trade routes had shifted. The rise of Islam had isolated the Christian kingdom. The once mighty empire was fractured and vulnerable. Amidst this crumbling world, a powerful figure rose in the southern highlands, a woman who would challenge centuries of Aksumite dominance. Her origins remain debated. Some say she was of Beta Israel heritage. Others claim she was a pagan queen from a southern dynasty, possibly from the Sidama or Agawu people. What all agree on, she burned with a mission to destroy Aksum. Around the year 960 AD, she launched a series of devastating attacks on the Aksumite heartland. Churches were torched, nobles were executed, monasteries were destroyed, even the royal line was hunted. According to legend, Yodit reigned for 40 years, a period remembered as one of darkness by Ethiopian Christian tradition. But was she simply a destroyer, or a revolutionary trying to end centuries of religious and political oppression? Some historians argue that Yodit sought vengeance against the Aksumite church and monarchy for marginalizing her people. Others believe she represented a larger regional power shift, a rebellion of the south against the crumbling north. Queen Yodit's legacy is one of contradiction. In Ethiopian Orthodox Christian tradition, she is seen as an agent of chaos, almost demonic. She is blamed for the destruction of holy relics, including churches believed to house sacred manuscripts and even connections to the Ark of the Covenant. But in other traditions, especially among marginalized communities, she is remembered as a symbol of power, resistance, and feminine strength. Modern historians still debate whether Yodit was one person or a symbol for a series of rebellions across the Ethiopian highlands. But the impact of her rule was clear. Aksum never recovered. In the wake of Yodit's fiery rebellion, a new era began. The Zagwe dynasty emerged from the ashes in the 10th century, shifting the power center from Aksum to Lasta, near present-day Lalibela. While the Zagwe kings embraced Christianity, they represented a break from Aksumite lineage. They built new religious centers, including the magnificent rock-hewn churches of Lalibela, not just to glorify God, but to redeem the past. I hope you like this video. If you do, please don't forget to subscribe to Tales of Ethiopia for more videos. Until next time.